A very warm welcome to Daily Dispatch, a show that gives you all the latest news and updates from the digital ecosystem. I'm Priya Sheth. Thank you very much for logging in. Time now to get you all the top news stories that we've been tracking for you this evening. Well, first up, dental care startup CareStack has raised $22.5 million in funding. This round also saw participation from Steadview Capital, Delta Dental of California, Accel Partners, 8 Roads, as well as F Prime Capital. The dental care startup plans to use this funding to expand its operations also for talent acquisition. Now, CareStack had earlier raised $28 million in 2019. Well, moving on to the second headline of the day, Pi Ventures has launched its second fund with an initial target corpus of 565 crore rupees. Pi Ventures is looking to invest in areas such as material sciences, biotech, nanotech, as well as space tech. Now, Pi Ventures expects to close the second fund by the end of this year, and the final target could be in the range of $75 to $100 million. Well, B2B e-commerce platform Bizongo has completed a $51 million fresh funding exercise with investments from the British government's development finance body CBC and Thailand-based Adventures. Bizongo claims that it has witnessed an over 3x growth since the completion of the latest round of fundraising and is now only inches away from profitability. Well, moving on to the final headline of the day, Paytm and Cred have launched initiatives to fight oxygen shortage in India. As part of its initiative, Oxygen for India, Paytm aims to raise 10 crore rupees and import 3,000 oxygen concentrators for all stakeholders in the COVID-19 economy. Now, Cred has invited its members to donate their Cred coins towards buying oxygen-related equipment, which will be facilitated by Milad. Well, moving on to our second segment, I have with me Ronnie Screwvala of Upgrad. The company has just raised $120 million. And this is the first time that the company has gone through an external source of funding. So bringing Temasek on board, what does it really mean for Upgrad?
Well, I think it means the right stepping stone. I think for the last 5 years, we've done very well for ourselves. We've been blessed and fortunate enough to fund ourselves. We're not a bootstrap company. We've grown substantially. But I think it's allowed us to really zero in on our vision. Sometimes I think when you're in a fundraising rat race, the vision gets a little bit more horizontal than it needs to be focused. And I think we've been able to do that. We were very clear that we wanted to build a very strong B2C business. We were very clear that our ARPUs would be something that would need the credibility to build and the time to do it. We've invested in tech. We've invested in the product. As we spoke about a little earlier, you've done a course, you understand the importance of deep learning. So I think completion rates, outcomes is also something very important for us. I think all of this we would not have been able to do, in an environment where we were going to look out for funds. Because I can tell you, a lot of people would have said, why don't you half the price of your courses? You might get double the students. Or why don't we do X and why don't we do Y? So I think we're on a very good trajectory. Temasek is a long-term investor, very strategic. And I think it just looked like an excellent match for us to be able to take our next leg of our journey with someone like that.
There's a lot of talk about edtech companies becoming unicorns, and we've seen so many edtech companies in the past achieve that unicorn status. So how far is Upgrad from getting to the unicorn status?
See, I'd be very blunt with you, Priya. I'm a first-generation entrepreneur. And I've done it at a time when there were no loans, there was no debt, there was no venture capital, there wasn't even angel. So I like to look at unicorns as a very mythical thing. It's a lovely media concept that gets done. And there's nothing wrong with it because it's fantastic. But it is basically 10 to 15, maximum 16 global investors that want to invest in businesses that are much more forward-looking, at values and price that can block other people from coming in. And therefore, many unicorns get born like that. Now, the ones that get past the 10 billion and 20 billion, that's when you obviously have an acknowledgement that you're really building a business. So for me, the unicorn benchmark is not a chest-thumping moment at all. I think strong money and big money follows deep businesses, long-term businesses. And I've learned in my life that the finishing post is more important and not the starting gate.
Right. When we look at 2021, and I've seen the kind of innovation that Upgrad has brought
over the last couple of months. What does 2021 look like in terms of the fund utilization, in terms of the expansion roadmap? If you can run us through that.
So, I think the first 2 to 2.5 years of our journey was tech platform, product, learning experience. The next two years has really been to grow working professional category, diverse ourselves into 100 courses, tie up with multiple universities, and focus on the working professional. 21 and 22, the financial year FY22, the focus is really to create now the ecosystem. I think we're at a phenomenal critical mass. We've gone past anyone thinking, oh, is this a niche business? I believe that the total addressable market in the higher education space is much larger than the K-12. Now, statistics and consultants will always say, because you have to go by empirical evidence. Entrepreneurs don't go by empirical evidence. They go by what they think they're going to market make. If somebody said 5 years back, what's the market for credit cards or what's the market for fintech, you would have drawn a small square. Okay, but you need to build that. So this year is much more about building the ecosystem, which is why we made our acquisitions in recruitment, in test prep, and there'll be about 2 more that I can't talk about, but will be announced in the next 30 days. It's also about the international geography, because EdTech, as we can see, travels across the world. And I think with our tech platform, we can do that. And the third one is degrees. So international, degrees, and M&As, I think, is our growth portfolio, all within the ecosystem to enlarge the higher education space.
You've raised $120 million at this point in time. Going by this kind of aggressive expansion plans for M&A that you have going forward, do you think that Upgrad will require more funds in the near future?
We build businesses genuinely, and I think the funding follows later on. My whole life in the last 30 years, first the ideas come, then one has gone to execution, and then fortunately, most times funding is followed after that. So I don't put my North Star as, do I need the next round of funding? Education and overall EdTech, we've done in the last 5 years, we've come to a 1,200 crore run rate with less than $20 to $25 million of capital. So it's not about the funding. It's about the execution, it's about the idea, and it's about building the brand, and it's all of that.
When you talk about the revenue run rate, and you just briefly spoke about it, what is the kind of ambition that you hold in terms of growing the business to achieve scale in terms of revenue? Any targets for FY22 that you may have?
Well, we have been growing 100% every year, and we intend to do that in FY22. That's very clearly the growth target. That's the one-liner. But overall, we've set an even more ambitious target. We do want to be about a $2 billion revenue company by 2026. We might miss that by a year, and it might happen in 2027. But that's the critical scale. And that ambition you need right now, because otherwise most people think the big companies come only from the Western world. And we want to establish that in something like that, the largest companies that are listed in the US have revenues of about $200 million. So nobody's really got to that level of scale. I think India is an incredibly important market, and India to the world is an incredibly important one. The single largest other players is the US market. China is huge, but it's what I would call insulated, in the sense it's for the people, by the people there. So I think between India and US, those are the two scalable markets. And then you've got incredible opportunities in APAC, which is where Asia itself is a large hunting ground for disrupting EdTech.
Rani, I want to talk to you about your experience. You've been a seasoned entrepreneur. We've got lots of startups watching our show right now, lots of aspiring startups out there. I want to understand from you, being a seasoned entrepreneur, what is the one thing that you think that you've done right to achieve this kind of success that you have in all your ventures?
I've stuck it out. And by sticking it out, I've increased my ratio of success. That's basically it. And I think entrepreneurship at the core, you can have the great ideas, you can have the visionary, you can raise the funds, but you have to stick it out from that perspective. And I think that's given me the multiplicity of that. I think that I would say I've failed 8 times and succeeded 2 times is my ratio. And I still believe that you can have a success ratio, because when something goes down, it's a 1x, meaning if I've risked, I'm just saying 10 crores of capital in something, my downside is the 10 crores if it goes down. But the 2 upsides should be 20x or 40x. So if I have 2 upsides at 40x and 8 downsides at 1x each, which is 8x, you come out on top. But for that, you need that resilience and that grit to stick it out. I think many of us don't stick it out.
You also are an investor, under your own venture that you are investing into early stage startups. I want to understand from you, and what is the kind of advice that you would give a startup out there? Because when you talk to a lot of startups out there, they're saying that profitability is not something that we're looking at, in the near term. How important do you think is profitability while charting out a roadmap for a startup?
I think if everyone is building a business that they can't even if they have to make a 3-year plan in their minds and the wildest imagination doesn't lead to some sense of profitability, I think that's a challenge. Now, having said that, there are many companies that have been built that are extremely valuable companies. And everyone thinks, oh, Amazon didn't make profit for 10 years and look what it did. That's not exactly correct. I think people will have to go a lot more deeper into that answer, because if the core business is unit economic positive and the core business is generating profitability, but you're in a massive expansion for further investment, that's good. But if your core business, you are paying for every customer you acquire. Today in food delivery, you're paying for every customer that you deliver. So one fine day when I'm not getting my discounted lunch at 90 rupees and I have to go back to 150 rupees, I'm not sure whether everyone will do that. So we have to check our business sustainability models. Now, the problem is in this race for unicorn, in this race for valuations, some will go through, but many won't. Because when you do that, you're down to about 15, 20, 25%. Most founders are down to 15 and 20%. Only thing I would say is, at the last value at which you've raised your money, if after that you do a down round, you're going to get diluted. Now, investors will be friendly with you and say, no, we'll protect you in this down round. But if it happens again, you're going to be down to zero. So I think we have not tested the element that when people have diluted so much, that when it really comes to actually giving an exit and those valuations don't come at that stage, they'll actually own 0% of the company in the quest for actually going out to raise funds.
I want to ask you one final question before I let you go. And this is primarily on the edtech space. At this point in time, everyone's saying the edtech space is at an inflection point. It's never been better for the edtech space. But going forward, do you anticipate a lot of consolidation to take place in a sector that's so hot right now?
I think consolidation is a little early because there aren't that many quality assets. Now, having said that, for example, if the player in the K-12 sector has managed to get to a currency which is still very large, and they've done a good job at that, say, for example, and because of that, it sounds easier to buy versus build, that's a rare exception. But by and large, I think consolidation will be slow. K-12 today has seen a honeymoon period primarily because of the COVID. I would say higher education has not. I think our best time is going to come when things settle down.
All right. On that note, many thanks for joining us today on the Daily Dispatch. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, time now to wrap up this edition of the Daily Dispatch. I'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Goodbye, take care and stay safe.